The sprawling glass and steel monolith that was Omnicorp's global headquarters hummed with a subdued energy even after midnight. In the hushed canyons of the executive floor, the only sounds were the distant whir of servers and the gentle, rhythmic squeak of Elijah Eli Vance's mop. At 50, Eli moved with a quiet efficiency that spoke of years spent perfecting his craft. His face, a canvas of deep-set lines and a perpetually calm expression, seemed to absorb the opulent silence of the empty offices around him. He wasn't just a janitor. He was a silent observer, a shadow in a world of blinding spotlights. Eli was a man of routines, and his routine led him through the polished marble halls, past the gleaming mahogany desks, and into the CEO's sprawling office suite. He worked diligently, his movements precise, almost meditative. The air, typically thick with the scent of ambition and expensive coffee during the day, now carried the faint, sterile aroma of cleaning solution. Eli often had a small, beat-up radio perched on his cleaning cart, its dial tuned to international news channels. Tonight, a soft murmur of Mandarin drifted from the speakers, discussing global financial markets. He understood every word, the intricate dance of economic indicators and geopolitical shifts, far more deeply than any of the executives who occupied these offices during daylight hours. Yet, here he was, invisible, an essential cog in the corporate machine, unnoticed by the very people he enabled. He was a man of vast hidden depths, reduced to a silhouette in the gilded cage of corporate power. One Tuesday night, as Eli meticulously polished the glass conference table in the CEO's private meeting room, he noticed a thick, leather-bound book lying half submerged in the overflowing recycling bin. It was a first edition, a rare collection of Tang Dynasty poetry, carelessly discarded among empty coffee cups and discarded market reports. The spine was cracked, a few pages dog-eared, but to Eli it was a treasure. He paused his work, his brow furrowed with a silent reverence. The book felt cool and heavy in his calloused hands. He carefully extracted it, dusting off the fine layer of office grime, and placed it gently on the top shelf of his supply cart, intending to take it home later. This quiet act of rescue, this profound respect for knowledge amidst the corporate waste, was his save the cat moment. It wasn't about monetary value. It was about principle, about recognizing worth where others saw only refuse. It solidified Eli's intrinsic goodness, showcasing a soul that valued beauty and intellect beyond their immediate utility. It was an unspoken contrast to the superficiality that often permeated the high-stakes world of Omnicorp. As Eli continued his rounds, wiping down the vast panoramic windows overlooking the city, a loose flap from his old, threadbare jacket pocket caught on the edge of his cart. A small, laminated card slipped out, fluttering silently to the polished floor. It was an old student ID from Beijing University, the photo slightly faded, showing a much younger, intense Eli. Beneath the photo, in elegant Chinese characters, were academic distinctions that would stun anyone who read them. He quickly bent down, his movements swift and practiced, snatching it up before it could be seen. He tucked it deep into an inner pocket, a fleeting glimpse of a past carefully concealed. No one would ever suspect the quiet janitor, the man who moved through the shadows of Omnicorp, was once a prodigious scholar, fluent in a language that now confounded the very executives who oversaw his work. This tiny, almost imperceptible detail was the seed of mystery, a whisper of a grander, more complex history that Eli deliberately kept hidden, a secret power simmering beneath the surface of his unassuming exterior. The vast chasm between his current role and his past intellectual prowess was a testament to a journey unseen and untold, preparing the ground for the dramatic reveal to come. The hum of Omnicorp's executive floor, typically a low thrum of controlled power, had mutated into a frantic, dissonant buzz. Julian Thorne, Omnicorp's charismatic and notoriously demanding CEO, paced his office like a caged tiger. At 38, Julian exuded an aura of effortless authority, his perfectly tailored suit and sharp, decisive movements usually projecting an image of unflappable control. Today, however, that facade was crumbling. Beads of sweat dotted his brow, and his normally calm voice was strained, bordering on a shout as he spoke into his phone. "What do you mean, unavailable? This is the most critical negotiation of the quarter. Get him here now. I don't care what it takes." His exasperated plea was directed at his chief of staff, who, from the frantic tone of her replies, was clearly at the end of her tether. The him in question was Omnicorp's lead Chinese translator, an indispensable cog in Julian's ambitious plans. A massive, potentially transformative deal with Dragon Tech, a leading Chinese tech conglomerate, hung precariously in the balance. The delegation, led by the formidable Liao Wei, was due to arrive in mere minutes, and their interpreter had, inexplicably, vanished due to a last-minute emergency. Julian's carefully constructed world, built on precision and meticulous planning, was about to collide with a monumental, unforeseen disaster. This wasn't just a business deal. It was Julian's magnum opus, a move designed to cement his legacy as a visionary leader. Failure was not an option. Elijah Vance, meticulously polishing a remote corner of the same executive floor, overheard the increasingly desperate whispers. His mop strokes slowed, then stopped. He listened as Julian's frustration escalated into outright panic, the word translator echoing repeatedly, tinged with sheer desperation. Eli felt a familiar stir deep within him, a dormant urge to step forward, to fix something broken. He knew the full weight of the situation, the subtleties of the Mandarin phrases he caught, the urgency in Julian's voice, the sheer financial implications for Omnicorp. He pictured the intricate dance of diplomacy and technical jargon that lay ahead, a dance he was uniquely qualified to lead. Yet, a heavy reluctance settled over him. Decades of being invisible, of being overlooked, of hearing the dismissive tones in the very voices now fraught with anxiety, held him back. He thought of the casual slights, the averted gazes, the unspoken assumptions about his capabilities based solely on his uniform. To step into the light now would mean shattering the comfortable anonymity he had cultivated. It would mean facing the scrutiny of people who had, for years, seen him as little more than a piece of the furniture. A familiar bitterness, a memory of past injustices, momentarily threatened to drown out the quiet, insistent voice urging him to act. He hesitated, caught between the desire to help and the ingrained habit of self-preservation. The grand double doors to the executive conference room swung open with a theatrical flourish. Julian Thorne, now visibly perspiring, stood rigid, forcing a strained smile onto his face as the Dragon Tech delegation, led by the impeccably composed Liao Wei, approached. Julian extended a hand, his gaze darting frantically around for any sign of a miracle interpreter. There was none. The silence in the hallway, thick with unspoken anticipation, felt deafening. Julian's heart pounded against his ribs, a drumbeat of impending doom. He was on the precipice of utter humiliation, not just for himself, but for the entire corporation. It was in that precise, agonizing moment, as Julian's professional life flashed before his eyes, that Eli made his choice. He couldn't stand by and watch the company, the place he had quietly served for so long, stumble so disastrously. The internal struggle, the memories of prejudice, all faded before a deeper sense of responsibility, a powerful, unshakable urge to use the talents he possessed, regardless of the personal cost. From the shadowy alcove where his cleaning cart was parked, Elijah Vance pushed himself forward. His voice, usually soft and unremarkable, carried a surprising clarity in the hushed corridor. "Mr. Thorne," he said, stepping into the glaring fluorescent light, "I believe I can assist you with the translation." His words, calm and assured, cut through Julian's panicked haze. This was the point of no return. Eli had stepped out of the shadows, irrevocably altering his path and setting the stage for a confrontation that would redefine perceptions and destinies within Omnicorp. The silence that followed Eli's offer was so profound, it seemed to absorb the frantic energy that had moments before permeated the executive floor. Julian Thorne stared at Eli, his initial panic morphing into a cocktail of disbelief and barely concealed offense. A janitor, offering to translate a multi-million-dollar deal with a Chinese tech giant. The absurdity of it was almost comical, yet the desperation clinging to Julian like a shroud prevented outright laughter. He glanced at Eleanor Vance, who had just emerged from the inner sanctum of the conference room, her elegant blazer perfectly pressed, her expression one of acute, disdainful curiosity. Eleanor Vance, a woman who moved through Omnicorp's upper echelons with the regal air of a queen surveying her domain, was the embodiment of old money and entrenched corporate hierarchy. At 60, her sharp features and meticulously coiffed silver hair spoke of impeccable taste, and an even more impeccable sense of her own superiority. She had been observing Julian's panicked state with a quiet, almost smug satisfaction. The young CEO's occasional blunders confirmed her long-held belief that true leadership required more than just charisma. It required pedigree. When Eli stepped forward, a faint, almost imperceptible scoff escaped her lips. A cleaning man? She thought, her eyes narrowing with icy contempt. This is Julian's solution? He truly is out of his depth. Eleanor was not just a witness, she was a judge, and Eli, in her eyes, was already found wanting. Her motivation wasn't greed, but a deeply ingrained belief in social order and the proper place for everyone within it. Her pride, coupled with her immediate dismissal of Eli based on his appearance and position, established her unequivocally as the Type B antagonist. Julian, caught between the rock of utter failure and the hard place of accepting help from his janitor, swallowed hard. The Dragon Tech delegation, led by the astute Liao Wei, were already taking their seats inside the opulent conference room, their polite smiles masking an underlying expectation of efficiency and professionalism. There was no time. "Mr. Vance," Julian finally managed, his voice strained, Are you serious?" The doubt was heavy in his tone, but a flicker of desperate hope danced in his eyes. Eli met Julian's gaze with calm assurance. "Perfectly serious, Mr. Thorne, I assure you." With a defeated sigh, Julian gestured towards the conference room. "All right then, let's see." As Eli followed Julian into the room, Eleanor stepped forward, her voice a low, venomous hiss directed at Julian. "Are you mad, Julian? This is a mockery. You're going to put Omnicorp's reputation in the hands of him?" Julian ignored her, his focus solely on the looming disaster. Eli took his place at the head of the long, polished table opposite Liao Wei. The air in the room was thick with anticipation and a subtle tension. Julian began the introductions, his voice still shaky. "Mr. Liao, esteemed colleagues, please forgive the slight delay. Our primary translator had an unforeseen emergency. However, we have a very capable replacement. This is Mr. Vance." Lo Wei, a man whose polite smile rarely wavered, gave a slight nod. "Indeed. We are eager to begin, Mr. Thorne." He then launched into a cordial but lengthy opening statement in rapid, nuanced Mandarin, detailing Dragon Tech's vision for the partnership. As Liao Wei spoke, Eli listened, his expression unchanged. Then, without a moment's hesitation, he began to translate. His voice, clear and resonant, filled the room. The Mandarin flowed from him with an effortless fluency, not merely translating words, but capturing the precise intonation, the cultural nuances, the subtle diplomatic politeness embedded in Liao Wei's speech. He then seamlessly switched to English, delivering the translation with equal precision and grace. The unveiling was complete. Julian's jaw dropped. Eleanor, who had settled into her chair with a smug, anticipatory sneer, visibly stiffened. Her eyes, initially alight with cynical amusement, widened in genuine shock. The seamlessness, the sheer perfection of Eli's delivery, was undeniable. Eleanor's mind reeled. Her carefully cultivated assumptions about Eli, the quiet, uneducated janitor, shattered into a million pieces. The smooth, cultured voice, the impeccable grammar, the nuanced understanding of complex business jargon and cultural subtext. It defied everything she believed. A flush crept up her neck, fueled by a mixture of embarrassment and rising fury. How could he possess such a skill? It was an affront to her very worldview, an unwelcome disruption to the established order. A dangerous thought began to form in her mind, cold and calculating. This is an anomaly, a fluke, or worse, a trick. She couldn't allow a man like Eli, a mere service employee, to overshadow her, or worse, to become indispensable to Julian, a man she secretly wished to control. She imagined the whispers, the snide remarks among her peers about Omnicorp's janitor-turned-translator. It was unacceptable. Her gaze flickered to Julian, who was now beaming, relief washing over his face. A look that quickly turned to awe as Eli continued to translate complex technical specifications. Eleanor's initial shock gave way to a simmering resentment, then a concrete plan of action. She would not let this stand. A subtle, almost imperceptible smirk touched her lips. He may have impressed them now, she thought, her eyes glinting with malicious intent. But I will find his weakness. I will find a way to expose him. The seeds of Eleanor's scheme were firmly planted, ready to sprout into a full-blown attempt to discredit and undermine Eli, making her the active antagonist from this moment forward. The executive conference room, usually a sterile chamber of hushed agreements and PowerPoint presentations, now felt like an elaborate arena for Elijah Vance. The polished mahogany table gleamed under the recessed lighting, reflecting the strained faces of Julian Thorne and the inscrutable expressions of the Dragontech delegation. Every subtle shift in posture, every nuanced phrase from Liao Wei was a test. Eli, seated at the table as if by right, felt the full weight of the moment. The air crackled not just with the promise of a lucrative deal, but with the silent, insidious challenge emanating from Eleanor Vance. Her presence, stiff and disapproving, was a constant pressure, a cold, judgmental breath against his very being. The tension was a palpable entity, tightening around Eli with each passing minute. The negotiation proceeded, a high-stakes ballet of technical specifications, financial figures, and diplomatic courtesies. Julian, now fully invested in Eli's astonishing abilities, leaned forward, his relief palpable as Eli flawlessly conveyed complex proposals and counteroffers. He watched, mesmerized, as Eli navigated the intricacies of the discussion, his voice shifting effortlessly between English and Mandarin, capturing not just the literal meaning, but the unspoken intentions. Liao Wei, initially intrigued, was now openly impressed, occasionally offering a subtle nod of approval, as Eli precisely articulated a particularly nuanced point. However, a different kind of challenge was brewing. Eleanor Vance, still simmering with resentment and incredulity, refused to be sidelined. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, her mind meticulously searching for a flaw, a moment of weakness, anything that would expose Eli as a fraud. She interjected frequently, her questions pointed and her tone subtly dismissive. Each query she posed felt like a deliberate attempt to trip Eli up, to pull him back down to the place she believed he belonged. Eli met each verbal thrust with unwavering calm, his composure a silent defiance against her prejudice. He was alone in this. Julian, while grateful, was too caught up in the negotiation itself to actively defend Eli against Eleanor's subtle aggressions. The Dragontech delegates remained neutral, observing the internal dynamics of Omnicorp with keen professional interest. Eli was a solitary figure, his intellect and self-possession his only weapons against a lifetime of systemic bias that Eleanor embodied. As the meeting approached its critical juncture, with a key partnership clause on the table, Eleanor decided to launch her final, decisive assault. "Mr. Vance," she began, her voice dripping with false civility, "I find your facility with language quite surprising. However, these discussions often delve into the true essence of cultural understanding, beyond mere vocabulary." She then turned to Liao Wei and, with a saccharine smile, uttered a Chinese idiom, notoriously difficult to translate accurately without deep cultural context, and immediately followed it with a series of rapid-fire, obscure technical terms related to a niche area of Dragontech's proprietary software. Her intention was clear, to create a linguistic and cultural minefield that would leave Eli floundering, exposing his superficial knowledge. The room held its breath. Julian's face paled, recognizing the trap. Liao Wei's polite smile tightened almost imperceptibly, his eyes fixed on Eli. This was Eli's hang-by-a-single-hair moment. The entire deal, Julian's career, and Eli's newfound precarious respect hung by a thread thinner than any silk. Eli closed his eyes for a fleeting second, the image of his old, faded university ID flashing in his mind. He felt the combined weight of their skepticism, Eleanor's malice, and the immense pressure of the high-stakes negotiation. He could feel the clock ticking, not just on the deal, but on his one chance to prove them all wrong. He had to perform, not just for Julian, but for every overlooked, underestimated soul like himself. The air in Omnicorp's gleaming conference room thickened to an almost unbearable density. Eleanor Vance's voice, laced with its venomous challenge, seemed to hang in the silence, a test not just of language, but of worth. Eli Vance, the janitor who dared to stand in the light, closed his eyes for a fleeting second. In that brief moment, the faces of countless individuals he had known, marginalized and dismissed, flashed before him. He thought of his own long-buried academic life, the years of dedicated study, the sheer joy of intellectual pursuit, now reduced to mopping floors. He felt the cold weight of Eleanor's prejudice, the subtle skepticism of Julian Thorne, and the quiet professional scrutiny of Liao Wei. It was a perfect, suffocating, breathless moment, where everything seemed poised on the knife edge of spectacular failure. Eleanor allowed a triumphant smirk to spread across her lips, certain she had finally snared him. Julian's breath hitched, his carefully constructed relief threatening to collapse into despair. Then, Eli opened his eyes. They gleamed with a quiet, fierce intelligence, sharper than any diamond Eleanor possessed. He drew a deep, steadying breath, not of panic, but of profound understanding. His voice, when it came, was not hurried or defensive, but measured, calm, and utterly confident. "Mr. Liao," Eli began, his gaze sweeping across the Chinese delegation, "Madame Vance has presented an intriguing challenge, one that truly tests the depth of cultural understanding." He then seamlessly shifted to Mandarin, not just translating the complex idiom Eleanor had thrown at him, but elaborating on its historical context, its philosophical underpinnings, and its subtle, often humorous implications in modern business negotiations. He then wove in the obscure technical terms with an ease that suggested profound familiarity, explaining their function and potential impact on the proposed partnership, all while subtly correcting a minor technical misunderstanding embedded in Eleanor's original phrasing. He concluded his explanation with a polite, almost imperceptible bow towards Liao Wei, a gesture of profound cultural respect that transcended mere translation. The room erupted, not in shouts or applause initially, but in a collective, stunned silence that gradually gave way to a wave of awe. Liao Wei, the formidable head of Dragon Tech, who had maintained an almost unreadable poker face throughout the tense negotiation, slowly rose to his feet. His polite smile transformed into a genuine, beaming grin. He walked around the table, extended both hands to Eli, and clasped them warmly. "Mr. Vance," Liao Wei declared, his English crisp and articulate, "your mastery of our language, and more importantly, your profound understanding of our culture and our technological aspirations, is truly extraordinary. You are not merely a translator. You are a bridge. We at Dragon Tech are not merely impressed. We are honored to conduct business with Omnicorp, especially when facilitated by such a remarkable individual as yourself." He then turned to Julian, his smile still broad. "Mr. Thorne, you are indeed fortunate." The validation was undeniable, radiating from the man whose approval mattered most. Julian Thorne, his face a mixture of utter shock and overwhelming relief, surged forward. He slapped Eli gently on the back, his eyes shining with a newfound respect that bordered on reverence. "Eli," he breathed, a genuine, humble admiration in his voice. "That was incredible. I have no words. Thank you. Thank you." All traces of his earlier skepticism and professional detachment vanished, replaced by a profound understanding of the treasure he had unknowingly harbored within his own company. He immediately, publicly, and decisively offered Eli not just a position, but a partnership. "Eli," Julian continued, his voice ringing with conviction, "this company needs you, not just for translations, but for your insight, your intellect. I want to offer you the newly created role of Chief International Strategy Officer, effective immediately." And then there was Eleanor Vance. Her face, moments ago flushed with anticipated triumph, was now a ghastly shade of white. The smug smirk had curdled into a mask of abject humiliation and unadulterated fury. Her carefully laid trap had not only failed, but had spectacularly backfired, illuminating her own prejudice and small-mindedness for everyone to see. She was no longer observing. She was being observed. And the looks of the other Omnicorp executives, now shifting from impressed wonder at Eli to thinly veiled disdain for Eleanor, were a visible testament to her spectacular downfall. She tried to melt back into her seat, to become invisible, but every eye in the room seemed to burn into her, silently condemning her bigotry and vindictiveness. The victory was not just Eli's. It was a resounding vindication of dignity over prejudice, talent over elitism. The arena had turned, and the audience, once skeptical, now cheered for the unsung hero, leaving the villain exposed and shamed in the glaring light of truth. The highly charged atmosphere in Omnicorp's executive conference room slowly dissipated, leaving behind the palpable weight of a groundbreaking deal sealed and the undeniable shift in corporate hierarchy. Eleanor Vance, her face still a mask of bitter humiliation, discreetly retreated, her once commanding presence reduced to a quiet, resentful shadow. Elijah Vance, no longer just the janitor, stood tall amidst the executives, his composure a silent testament to his profound intelligence and newfound status. The relief radiating from Julian Thorne was almost visible, a light washing over his features as he grasped the full scope of the disaster Eli had averted. His world, once teetering on the brink of professional ruin, had been irrevocably saved, and with it, his entire outlook on talent and merit. The immediate aftermath saw Julian Thorne, with Eli's quiet consultation, channel Omnicorp's vast resources and his own considerable influence, not just into the DragonTech partnership, but into a sweeping reevaluation of the company's internal culture. He wasted no time. Within days, Eli's new role as Chief International Strategy Officer was formally announced, a move that sent ripples of shock and awe throughout the global corporation. Eli was immediately provided with a lavish corner office, a dedicated support team, and access to the highest echelons of corporate decision-making. His insights, once unheard, now commanded immediate attention and respect. He was swiftly integrated into strategic meetings, his profound understanding of global markets and cultural nuances proving invaluable. For Eleanor Vance, the transformation was equally profound, though far less welcome. Her spectacular failure to discredit Eli, coupled with his undeniable success, had irrevocably shattered her standing. The other board members, witnessing her petty, prejudiced machinations, quietly but firmly began to sideline her. Her carefully cultivated network of influence withered as her colleagues, eager to align themselves with the rising star that was Eli and the newly enlightened Julian, distanced themselves. Within weeks, Eleanor found her proposals consistently rejected, her opinions ignored, and her once formidable power eroding with each passing day. A few months later, citing personal health reasons, a thinly veiled corporate euphemism, Eleanor Vance was quietly forced into early retirement, her ignominious departure a fitting end to her reign of prejudiced authority. A few weeks after the DragonTech deal, the quiet hum of Eli's new, expansive office enveloped them. The scent of genuine Chinese tea filled the air, a stark contrast to the sterile coffee aroma of his janitorial days. Eli and Julian sat across from each other, comfortable in a newfound camaraderie that transcended their former roles. They were sharing tea, a ritual that had quickly become a cherished part of their new working relationship. The cemetery incident. This refers to a previous story, not the current one. The correct reference should be the Translator crisis, though a raw memory for Julian, now felt like a distant, impactful storm, its powerful lessons deeply absorbed, leaving behind fertile ground for new growth. Julian gazed at Eli, his eyes reflecting a newfound humility and respect. "Eli," he began, his voice soft but sincere, "I have to apologize again. For my blindness, my assumptions. I allowed my own preconceived notions to cloud my judgment. You showed me a truth I desperately needed to see, and you did it with such grace and professionalism." Eli offered a gentle, understanding smile, his gaze calm. "It's okay, Julian," he replied, using Julian's first name, a subtle marker of their equal footing. "Many people see only what they expect to see. The important thing is to be open to seeing more." He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. This company, it always had potential. It just needed to look in the right places for its true strengths. This poignant conversation solidified their new bond, a partnership forged not by shared privilege alone, but by unexpected revelation, profound humility, and a shared commitment to building a more inclusive and effective future. The new calm was not just a return to peace. It was a strong, clear foundation for a future built on merit, empathy, and the power of unseen heroes finally stepping into the light. 5 years later, Omnicorp stood as a beacon of innovation and global collaboration, largely due to the transformative vision and leadership of Elijah Vance. The former janitor was now a titan in his own right, his name synonymous with successful international ventures, particularly in the burgeoning Asian markets. His silver hair now bore the distinguished sheen of hard-earned respect, and his calm eyes, once shadowed by anonymity, now sparkled with purpose and quiet contentment. Under his guidance, Omnicorp hadn't just expanded, it had evolved, fostering a culture of inclusivity and recognizing talent regardless of its outward packaging. His philanthropic work, deeply influenced by his own journey, extended beyond corporate initiatives, actively funding cross-cultural exchange programs and scholarships for underprivileged students aiming for global careers. Julian Thorne, once the ambitious but sometimes short-sighted CEO, had matured into a truly visionary leader. His partnership with Eli was legendary within the industry, a testament to the power of humility and open-mindedness. Julian consistently credited Eli for Omnicorp's exponential growth and cultural shift, ensuring Eli's contributions were recognized at every turn. Their professional relationship had blossomed into a genuine friendship, built on mutual respect and shared goals. Eli was not just a C-suite executive, he was a mentor, a confidant, and a living embodiment of the company's commitment to meritocracy. His quiet strength, once confined to the solitude of night shifts, now resonated through boardrooms and international summits, his voice a compelling advocate for bridging divides. The story, in its truest sense, found its culmination not in a grand corporate acquisition, but in a vibrant, bustling university auditorium. It was the inaugural commencement ceremony for the Elijah Vance Global Scholars Program, a joint initiative between Omnicorp and several international universities designed to identify and nurture hidden talents from all walks of life, just as Eli's own talent had been unearthed. Eli, impeccably dressed in a custom-tailored suit, stood on stage, his hand resting on the shoulder of a young woman from a disadvantaged background who had just delivered a valedictorian speech entirely in fluent Mandarin. Julian Thorne, seated in the front row, beamed with pride. As the ceremony concluded, Eli walked out into the warm sunlight, surrounded by enthusiastic graduates, their faces alight with hope for futures made possible by his vision. He paused, looking back at the bustling auditorium, then out at the sprawling university campus, a place that once seemed impossibly far from the quiet corridors he used to clean. He thought of the dusty old radio, the discarded Tang Dynasty poetry book, and the faded student ID card. His journey, from the invisible janitor to the respected global leader, was a testament to the quiet power of intellect, the enduring strength of character, and the transformative impact of one unexpected moment. The setting sun cast a golden glow over him, symbolizing new beginnings and the enduring power of recognizing true worth. The wisdom and compassion that radiated from him were a testament to how even the most profound prejudices, when met with courage and grace, could transform into an unexpected, flourishing second spring. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining the journey.